If you don't have visible abs, you're gonna be at a higher risk for heart disease or stroke, insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, various types of cancer, and fatigue. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what does having visible abs have to do with the negative health implications that I just listed? Well, this stems from the fact that not having visible abs means one of two things. You either have excess body fat, minimal muscle mass, or some combination of both of them. And excess body fat and minimal muscle mass are both leading indicators of and increase your risk of having the negative health implications that I just listed. Good news is getting visible abs is relatively simple. There's really only two factors involved. But before we break down those two factors, I want to tell you why I think I'm qualified to explain to you how to get visible abs. The main reason I think I'm qualified to teach you this is because I've coached 431 plus men inside of my program, defaultkings.com, and quite a few of them have left the program with visible abs. The other relevant factor that I believe makes me qualified to teach you this is because I myself have visible abs. So now that you're aware of these two big factors that in my opinion make me extremely qualified to teach you this, let's actually get into the content of the video. Factor number one is leanness. Now, this of course is going to relate to the excess body fat part of the equation. But the reason that I have this listed as number one, and in my opinion, I think it's the most important factor of the two, is gonna make a lot more sense at the end of the video once I've explained factors 1 and 2 in full. So stick around for the end for me to tie this together and really explain to you why I have leanness as number one. You've probably heard the saying, abs are made in the kitchen. And this is generally true when it comes to getting lean, because it's always going to be easier to manage or reduce your calorie intake than it is to burn additional calories via something like cardio or a grueling training regime. For example, it would take you roughly 45 minutes of running on the treadmill at 6 miles per hour, which is a 10-minute per mile pace, to burn approximately 500 calories, which is about the same amount of calories in a serving and a half of Ben & Jerry's famous half-baked ice cream. So how do we actually define leanness? There's gonna be a ton of different definitions that you can find, but for the sake of this video and the sake of simplicity, we're gonna define leanness as the percentage of your body that is comprised of fat compared to the percentage of your body that is comprised of muscle. Typically around the 15 to 18% body fat range is when you're gonna be able to actually see abdominal muscles rise to the surface. That's when they're gonna actually become visible. And the diagram on your screen in front of you right now is gonna make that really easy to see. You can see the models at 15% and 20%. Somewhere in that range is gonna be where your abs become visible. And now that's gonna be on a case-by-case basis. And a lot of this has to do with factor number 2 as well. But generally speaking, 15 to 18% body fat is where you can start to see these abdominal muscles coming to the surface. So let me tell you how to actually get to that 15 to 18% range. The first step is gonna be a calorie deficit. There really is no way around this one, no matter what the modern day fitness gurus tell you, and no matter how hard they try to drag calories in, calories out as being outdated. Every single weight loss and fat loss solution is going to come back to a calorie deficit of sorts. The differentiating factor is going to be what these people are using and what you use to actually get you into one. They simply have a unique vehicle of choice that's getting you into a calorie deficit, something like keto, carnivore, or intermittent fasting. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that these diets don't work. I'm just informing you that it's not the diet itself that's making you lose the weight. It's the calorie deficit that's caused by that diet that's making you lose the weight and lose the fat. So instead of me pitching you a new flashy name diet, I'm just gonna tell you to eat whatever diet you want, even if you wanna adopt one of those flashy ones, but be sure to track your calorie intake while you do it. Now, to actually get into a calorie deficit and properly adjust your calories as time goes on, check out this video that I posted on my channel that should be popping up somewhere on your screen, and I'll list it in the description as well. But this will give you a step-by-step playbook on how to figure out how many calories you should be eating, as well as how to successfully implement it over time. Now, the second step to actually getting to that 15 to 18% body fat range is what I call a protein excess. So think of the calorie goal that you're gonna determine by watching that video I just talked about a few seconds ago. Think of that calorie goal as a ceiling. You don't wanna go above that. You wanna stay at or below that calorie goal. But think of your protein goal as a floor. That is the bare minimum you should be eating. And if you go a little bit above it, that's okay. And honestly, That's going to be optimal in most cases. So how to determine your protein intake, it's a lot simpler than how to determine your calorie needs and how to leverage that over time. I don't need to make an entirely separate YouTube video for that. Your protein goal is going to be based on your goal body weight. So for example, if you're 250 pounds and you're trying to get to 200 pounds, you should aim to get to 200 grams of protein per day. Now, when it comes to implementing a new protein goal, something that may be unfamiliar to you, I've always seen this work best with a scaled intake approach. And what that means is you're actually going to start out not right at that 200 grams mark, not right at that goal body weight mark. You're going to start at about 0.6 grams of protein per 1 pound of your goal body weight. So using the 200 pounds of your goal body weight example, let's say you start out at 0.6 grams of protein per pound. That would mean you would start at 120 grams of protein a day. Once you've hit this daily for 4 weeks in a row, you can then bump to 0.7 grams of protein per pound of your goal body weight, which would be 140 grams a day. Hit that for 4 weeks in a row, and then bump to 0.8. And you continue to repeat this process until you're successfully eating 1 gram of protein per 1 pound of your goal body weight daily. This scaled approach allows you to actually build the default action of hitting your protein goal consistently, which is most important for long-term success. The calorie deficit / protein excess method will allow you to accomplish factor number 1 of having visible abs, which is getting lean. So now that you have that, let's move on to factor number 2. Factor number 2 is muscle mass. And this factor is going to solve the minimal muscle mass problem that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. If you think about it just logically, the larger your abdominal muscles are, the more developed they are, the easier it's going to be for them to be seen. The easier it is for them to rise to the surface and actually become visible. Building muscle mass is a little bit more complex than just getting lean by adjusting your diet. So this is where we're going to start to get a little bit fancy, as well as start to play a longer game with your health and your fitness. So even I'm guilty of having been a guy that's lazily said just squat and deadlift heavy to get a stronger core and get abs. And while this isn't totally untrue, you can definitely get a strong and aesthetic looking core by just focusing on heavy compound movements like deadlifts, squats, and overhead pressing. If your goal is to achieve optimal muscle mass in your midsection and an optimal aesthetic in your midsection, you're going to need to do more than just compound movements that, generally speaking, indirectly work those core muscles. You're going to want to work them directly. So on top of your heavy compound movements, you should directly work these 3 parts of your core. Number 1 is the rectus abdominis. This is used to bend your spine forwards and to the sides, similar to if you were bending down to tie your shoes or you were picking up a suitcase. My favorite way to target the rectus abdominis is to use a simple machine called a decline sit-up. And you can do this body weight, or you can hold a plate on your chest or hold a dumbbell behind your head and neck to make this more difficult. Second group of muscles in your abdominal section that you want to work is your transverse abdominis. And this is going to be responsible for stabilizing your core and stabilizing your spine, which is oftentimes going to lead to reduced low back pain. So full transparency, my favorite way to actually work the transverse abdominis is going to be with the heavy compound movements that I mentioned before, your squats, your deadlifts, your overhead pressing. But if you want more direct work on that transverse abdominis, you can do things like farmer's carries, suitcase carries, or even the pail off press. Now, the third section of your abdominals that you want to work is your external and internal obliques. Now, if you look at any textbook and you see other videos online, you're going to see that these are technically 2 separate muscle groups. There's technically 4 total muscle groups in your abdominal section that you need to work. But since the external and internal obliques are so similar and have such similar functions and are hit by such similar movements, I decided to lump them into just one category for the simplicity of this video. The obliques are responsible for bending to the side and rotating your trunk, similar to if you were to swing a golf club or throw a football. My favorite way to hit these is with either a banded twist, a cable twist, or with something a little more intense like a wrestler's twist. On top of these movements, you must also factor in the intensity to which you're performing them. So too often people's working sets, which are the ones you actually gain muscle from, look like warm-up sets. Generally speaking, if you're putting down the weights before your muscles are nearly or completely giving out mechanically, you aren't training hard enough. Your goal should be to aim to land within 2 reps of mechanical failure and beyond with all of your working sets, as seen by the green zone pictured in the graphic in front of you. Now, as promised at the beginning of the video, I'm going to tie together why your main priority should be leanness when it comes to getting visible abs. If you have minimal muscle mass, but you have maximum leanness, chances are your abs will still be visible. It's the reason that guys with the cross-country runner build still have six packs, because they're sub 10% body fat, which isn't necessarily a number I recommend you target unless your goal is to step on stage as a bodybuilder. You can easily see their abdominal muscles. Now, if you take a guy that's the opposite of the cross-country runner build, where they have maximum muscle mass but minimum leanness, visible abs is far from a guarantee. In both of these pictures, Eddie Hall has maximum muscle mass, but on the left, he's far less lean than he is on the right, which is why in the picture on the right, you can actually visualize his abdominal muscles. So if you want the best odds of seeing your abs, in my opinion, you should 1, prioritize getting leaner. Do it by using the calorie deficit protein excess method that I showed you in this video. And 2, you should simultaneously play the long game of building more muscle mass. Do it by training all 3 sections of the abdominal muscles using the heavy compounds as well as the direct isolation core work in order to get the best of both worlds when it comes to training your core for strength and functionality as well as aesthetics and just plain looking good. If you're a guy that wants to see how my team will work with you one-on-one and use our default actions framework to help you lose 10% of your body weight in 12 weeks or less, and how we refund you in full if you gain a single pound back after working with us, go to defaultkings.com. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, and subscribe. It makes a huge difference in whether or not the algorithm pushes this to people who need it.